Welcome back to Politics for Dummies, the show where we take the intricate ballet of federal governance and break it down until it tastes like Tim Hortons coffee. Weak, oversugared, and instantly forgettable. Kind of like, a campaign promise. It has been one hell of a week. International trade collapsed, domestic politics devolved into juvenile name-calling, and Alberta remembered that it has a public school system. Also, something really important happened. Canada's lone MOB team is causing a full-blown panic south of the border, and Donald Trump is absolutely furious. This is big, because nothing spells political stability quite like tying your national mood to a baseball team forced to play 29 other US franchises all on its own. The Blue Jays have taken a win and a loss in the World Series so far, and suddenly 29 stadiums full of Americans are on Canada watch. It's the closest Trump's actually come to building a wall, and it's basically just to stop the Jays from hitting dingers. Let's dive in, shall we? Our lead story this week involves a diplomatic row so petty and so thoroughly drenched in ego, it could only involve two people. Ontario Premier Doug Ford and a certain former, and now again current, and possibly in the future because authoritarianism, President of the United States. I think we know who we're talking about. So Ford's government aired this anti-tariff ad in the US that quoted former President Ronald Reagan criticizing tariffs. Let's have a look.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
In response, President Trump, clearly enraged that his trade policy was being fact-checked by a dead Republican, terminated all his trade negotiations with Canada. Absolutely insane. Now, Premier Ford, showing his unparalleled diplomatic savvy, agreed to suspend the ad, but only after it aired during the weekend's World Series games. Yes, folks, we literally paused high-stakes economic negotiations for a primetime baseball ad slot. Anyway, let's break it down. Action, pro, con, from the perspective of the actual person who instigated this particular action. So Doug Ford weaponized Ronald Reagan quotes during the Blue Jays World Series appearance against the LA Dodgers. That's the action. And the pro for him was that the strategy was highly effective. The ad campaign successfully reached American audiences at the highest levels, according to Ford, ensuring millions saw Canada poke the bear. Plus, we won Game 1 11-4, which has, the whole country kind of jazzed up. Prime Minister Mark Carney even joked that Trump was afraid to make a World Series bet because he doesn't like to lose. Canada won, a fragile American ego, 0. So the con here is that the US terminated all trade talks. This puts sectors like Canadian steel, aluminum, and energy into limbo and might require Canada to make additional concessions just to get the Americans talking again. So congratulations, Canada! We won a moral victory and a baseball game, but we might have lost billions in trade. We're officially sacrificing long-term solvency for short-term smugness, a true Canadian virtue. Speaking of economic consequences, the federal government decided to get tough with some of the biggest names in the automotive sector. So the action here is that Ottawa reduced the tariff-free import quotas for General Motors by 24.2% and Stellantis by 50% after they cut or cancelled production plans in Canada, breaking previous commitments. This is the government taking decisive action to hold companies accountable and defend the Canadian auto sector. Ministers Champagne and Joly vowed to protect workers and ensure subsidies only go to those who invest in Canada's future. The con here is that these punitive cuts come after the automakers already reduced their presence, costing hundreds of Canadian jobs in Oshawa, Ingersoll, and Brampton. The government is saying, we will punish you for leaving, but we still need you to know that we love you. It's the automotive version of ghosting. Ottawa slams the door, but keeps texting you up every time it needs a ride. Prime Minister Mark Carney, the economist turned politician, laid out his pre-budget vision this week, and the main takeaway was simple. Get ready to hurt, kids. Finally, a politician who promises pain up front. Carney's level of honesty can be described as dentist with a drill? So the action here. Carney addressed students, warning that transforming the economy in a hostile world will require some sacrifices and it will take time. He also announced an ambitious goal to double Canada's non-US exports over the next decade. So maybe Canada's secret plan is to become the world's biggest exporter of existential dread. We got that in spades over here these days. The pro here is that Carney is promising to be straight about the challenges and pivot Canada away from an unreliable US trading partner. The government plans to spend less and invest more, aiming for generational economic investments, as the Prime Minister has put it. The con here. The opposition, led by head dummy runner-up Pierre Poilievre, looking for my job, I think, he immediately jumped on the word sacrifices, arguing that youth have already sacrificed enough with double housing costs, job losses, and massive generational debt. Poilievre suggested Carney might as well have said, let them eat cake. Although Carney refused to specify what sacrifices Canadians will actually make, saying those details are saved for the budget. Quick side note, I read this article, I didn't actually see a video of it, so I didn't hear how Poilievre pronounced let them eat cake, but I have to imagine it was let them eat the cake. I don't know why. Anyway, I think the sacrifice is having to listen to politicians debate housing affordability while standing in a university auditorium built entirely by rich people's money. Also, when an economist tells you to prepare for sacrifices, that's not leadership. That's reading the menu and realizing you can only afford tap water. Meanwhile, across the aisle, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre decided that winning the next election required attacking one of the country's most respected national institutions, the RCMP. So the action here, not a very smart move, Poilievre called the RCMP leadership frankly just despicable and suggested former Prime Minister Trudeau would have faced jail time for scandals like the Aga Khan vacation if the RCMP hadn't covered it up. He then spent the next 48 hours denying he suggested Trudeau should be jailed. So the pro here for him, for Poilievre, is that this rhetoric, it plays strongly to his base, leveraging anger over government corruption and poor accountability. He's sending a clear message that Conservatives will take a hard line on law enforcement issues, promising zero tolerance for corruption. The con, calling the leadership of the RCMP despicable, is widely seen as a reckless move and an attack on a respected democratic institution. This has caused visible tension and dissent among some Conservative MPs who are reportedly questioning his style and whether they'll support him in this upcoming leadership review. It's the classic Poilievre strategy. Insult the police, then complain when they investigate corruption, then deny the insult, then complain the media misinterpreted the insult, then point to a picture of a guy wearing a Blue Jays jersey and say, "Look, a shiny thing!" In Alberta, the government is moving fast to end the teachers' strike. The provincial government plans to table the Back to School Act on Monday, a bill ordering 51,000 teachers back to work, likely within 24 to 48 hours. The Back to School Act, because nothing solves labor disputes like legally mandated grudges and plastic desk chairs. The pro here, students will be welcomed back quickly, and the lockout strike action will be deemed illegal once the law takes effect. Parents expressed relief that classes might resume. And remember, that's a pro for the person who initiated the action, not my opinion, because the con here, again, in the perspective of the person who initiated the action, is that the back to work order explicitly does not solve the underlying issues, such as increased pay to match inflation or legally mandated student-teacher ratios, which teachers say drove them to strike in the first place. So parents are disheartened knowing teachers are returning to the same complex ballooning class sizes. And finally, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand announced that Canada now views China as a strategic partnership, marking a significant shift from the 2022 policy that branded Beijing as an increasingly disruptive global power. So the action here, Canada is recalibrating its relationship with China for a constructive and pragmatic dialogue. The pro, the move aims to balance economic stress and security goals, diversifying trade to build economic resilience, especially given the instability from the US relationship. The con here, this pivot undermines PM Carney's previous stance calling China the biggest security threat, forcing Canada to perform selective engagement, which Beijing often dislikes. It also raises questions about how Canada will manage security and human rights concerns going forward. A strategic partnership with China. That's what they call it when you know your neighbor's stealing your Wi-Fi, but you need to borrow a cup of sugar because your usual supply chain is currently terminated by an angry man who hates dead presidents. And that, dummies, is your week in Canadian politics. I'm Mark Adam, your head dummy. Remember, keep your eyes on the Blue Jays, because right now, that's not the only thing in Canada beating the Americans, but it is a victory Trump can't terminate, unless he suddenly declares baseball a threat to national security. And at this rate, I mean, don't count it out. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and share. It goes a long way to support the channel, and we will be making videos and updating this weekly, so please do hit that subscribe button. Make sure you get all those notifications. We'll see you in the next video, dummies.